even like your like most hopped up street engine can't even turn.
Couldn't turn this at wide open throttle.
That's just.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Davin.
I'm Ben.
And we're here to talk about our top fuel dragster build down Schumacher Racing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool going down
Oh,
there.
it was bad. It was awesome. It was awesome.
We got quite a few questions online, plus we kind of just, I don't know, came up with some stuff of things that we learned while we were down there as well.
Yeah, things that we learned in a little backstage commentary on how awesome things are and
so
crazy.
Cool. What, I mean, right off the bat here, what sort of impressed you the most?
Well, given the fact that on a stand, that thing is 6 foot tall. I mean, granted, it's a foot or two off the ground, but it's 6 foot tall, and it is a daunting piece of equipment.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, when you're sitting there and you're thinking about what that engine is physically capable of and how much power it puts out, and of course the heritage and everything that it represents as far as how it got to where it's at, it brings the hairs up on the back of your neck when you're thinking about it. I mean, 11,000 horsepower is substantial. I mean, when you're looking at it, you're thinking, wow, the money in a carbon fiber injector, Kevlar bags holding the blower together if it comes apart. The same thing with the straps. The Mopar covers there that go over the top of the spark plugs. I mean, that's titanium. I mean, we're not talking about, let's just put a little piece of plastic over the top of this and hope for the best.
Right.
It's no, this is bulletproof shields. Let's be thoughtful about what we're dealing with.
Well, and even here, the covers for the headers that are sitting there are just, we'll just happen to make these out of carbon fiber just because we can.
That was the best too, and that was the comment. Why aren't these aluminum like everybody else? Well, because we got a carbon fiber shop. Why wouldn't we? well, okay.
Right.
Fantastic.
So cool. This is the whole thing. I mean, as we go into this, there's so many cool numbers around all this stuff. I mean, this whole process of completely tearing down and putting back together happens, how often? How many runs do they get in?
So, what they shoot for is basically this, ideally this engine lasts one event. And that one event is typically, 4 rounds of qualifying and 4 rounds to the winner's circle. So you're talking 8 rounds. 12, 16 rounds, that's even better. Because everything and when I mean the engine lasts, they're really talking about the crankshaft and the block. That's what their concern is. Okay. Because in the car, between every round, every time it goes down the track, it comes down to, it's tore down in the chassis to a bare block, the camshaft's in it, the crank is in it, and all your front bits are on there, after the blower belt. So the injection's taken off, the blower's taken off, the intake manifold's off. Usually unless something happens, the magnetos are left on. And then the heads are pulled off, and the pan is dropped. The pistons and rods are pulled out. So it's pretty much a full rebuild. But what surprised me is it's not a rebuild with brand new parts every time, or at all. So they're going through and they mark them so they know how many runs the rods have on them, and they check them for straightness and they check them for size and all that. But they have done their homework and said, well, if we hit 12 runs, these are going out.
Yep.
Regardless of what they look like, that's their limit. And play it safe, because there's a lot of money on the line if those go bad.
Yeah, I remember the piston guy was like marking the rods with how many times each one had been, and then they had everybody had a notebook of keeping track of how many times things run, and they all have numbers on them. It's crazy the amount of detail that it goes into.
Yep.
And also the fact that one of these weighs what? That whole thing there.
That whole assembly is right about 500 pounds, which I think 150 of it's right in a blower, because that blower is heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is like, I mean, crazy to think about, how heavy it is to lift a big block out of.
Yeah, so like
out of your
as a
Chevelle or
comparison, when we, like a small block Chevy, fully dressed in cast iron, is about 500 pounds at about half the physical size.
And a 1/100th of the horsepower.
Yeah. Well,
50th.
When one cylinder is making almost 1,400 horse, yeah, not bad.
We went down to Don Schumacher Racing, and I mean, not only did we shoot this video of this whole engine being torn apart and put back together, but you got to help.
Oh man, heck yeah! There was gonna be no other way. Yep.
So, I mean, talk about that experience for you. I mean, you've rebuilt a lot of engines. You raced yourself with your nostalgia dragster.
Yeah. So you're, my thought going into this is I can't wait to see what's inside of this, because there's going to be some miracle mushrooms in here that are just like, oh my God. And there's stuff that makes power. I mean, the blower makes all the power, magnesium, intake manifold. And, I think it's funny how you have this huge opening on the top of this, but it's only open in the back, based on how everything works and functions. So for my end of things, yeah, I'm looking at it and going, okay, we're just gonna see some amazing stuff. And we did, but at the end of the day, it kind of all boils down to the same parts, or it is all the same parts.
Right.
Others, blower's a new piece to it, but. All right, so in general terms, you have to have some way to get air and fuel in to any engine to make them work. Typically, it's a carburetor. In this situation, it is this, they'll call them a blower hat or an injector. This particular one, oddly enough, is called the Big Ugly. So you're sucking air and fuel down through the blower. You're adding additional fuel in there to basically enriching all that air and shove as much into that cylinder as you possibly will physically fit. And it's like that far at full throttle from hydrolocking. It's got that much. It's not atomized anymore. It's just wet.
And speaking of fuel and power and amount of space that it has to go into, displacement on this, and then what type of fuel? Oh,
yeah, so it actually, displacement-wise, is relatively low. It's 500 cubic inch, which in the grand scheme of things is big, but at the same token, there's a lot bigger motors out there. So yeah, you're talking 500 cubic inch, and they run on up to 90% nitromethane, which is mixed with methanol. So it's 10% methanol, 90% nitromethane. Nitromethane is a oxygenated fuel. So not only are you cramming as much fuel in there as you possibly can, nitromethane potential energy is 7 times more than your top racing fuel. So like 114 octane race fuel. It's 7 times more, has 7 times more potential for power.
That's crazy.
So yeah.
Cool, so blower's off.
Yep.
And what's next?
Blower's off. Actually, some fairly standard spark plug wires. We ran these on our 331 Hemi, oddly enough. But yeah, it's 2 plugs per cylinder because there's a lot of juice to burn there. Also, that's why they run the pair of magnetos. And then
it was something, 88 amps and 50,000 volts?
Each one of them are 44 amps. Yeah, they're pretty much arc welding through the spark plugs.
That is nuts. What are these patches right here? It looks like they're like bubbled up and.
Yeah, they're a controlled burst, so they're considered a burst panel. So it's a pop-off valve, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
So when if there's something starts to go wrong, and instead of the motor completely just blowing into shrapnel everywhere, it blows out and relieves that pressure out through there.
Okay, so it's like freeze plug, but for air.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then on the front of the blower, you'll see them too, and I think the back ones as well. A couple of them actually have.
I see them up
here
too.
They actually have stress transducers on them. So that's kind of an early warning device as they start to swell, meaning it's that fast.
Right.
But as they swell, they can start, the management system can start shutting things down as far as
fuel
reactionary.
down, power down.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, so here we're down, the intake manifold's off. That manifold is magnesium, basically just a weight savings piece. It doesn't work on heads and block, but it works really well for the intake. And it's about another 30% lighter than aluminum. And then here you have kind of a standard issue, if you will, Hemi, as far as shaft rocker setup, just like we had on our stock one. And you know, the huge wide head. These are full-on billet aluminum heads. Don Schumacher makes these from a chunk of raw aluminum. It's just 356 aluminum, and they aug all the chips out. And then what is different on these than a standard head is they actually have a stud that goes down into the block, which I found that to probably be the most difficult piece of the assembly, is because inside like right in here, well, you can see one right there. So this is a stud that goes up into the head, but you have a nut that's on the bottom side, and and there's just, it's a crappy spot to try to get to. So they got like a little stubby wrench, you know, on a torque wrench that's calibrated out, so it's adjusted for the distance change, but you only have like, you know, to tighten it.
So that end there is, there's a stud that's on the head that goes in there?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. So like when you take the head off, when you'll see it here, when you take the head off, there's 4 studs that go in that intake manifold area that typically aren't there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, see them there? Yeah.
Yep.
And surprisingly, that's a lot of mass, but they're not that heavy. You know, you take everything off as one unit that way, because remember their whole idea, so like at race day, they'll have stacks of these, I say stacks, they'll have 4 sets of heads ready to go on with zoomies hanging off them, or the headers hanging off them.
Minimizing the amount of
the assembly effort, yep. Because they have 35 minutes to turn this motor in the car on race day between rounds. So.
And what we'll get to is you see that there are different people's jobs to do the certain things.
Yes.
So everybody can kind of, you have these units that disassemble off, and then people can simultaneously work on that stuff, and then it kind of all comes back together at the end. Copper gaskets?
Yep, solid copper gaskets, ridiculously heavy, in comparison, like surprisingly heavy, I guess I should say.
They're thick too. They were like a quarter-inch thick.
They were, I remember one being 108 thousandths.
Okay.
So yes, very thick. Most head gaskets are 40 thousandths. Now, what I found out is that head gasket is very key part of things, other than just sealing. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
All right, so we're down now. We're pulling, and you can see all the milling of this block. It's just phenomenal. So these are billet aluminum blocks. Same thing. They start with a 3x2x2 chunk of solid aluminum, and mill out a lot of it. And
did they tell? Was it a day or something a full day, like 24 hours or something that it takes?
I think it were 18 hours of milling, and they're working on getting it down to 12 hours.
Yeah.
Because typically what they've been doing is they've been buying blocks. It's actually Dart Machine is who they buy blocks. General Group buys blocks from. And so Dart Machine does all this work, and they sell them. And oddly enough, I thought it was a discount. I mean, it was like 10 grand, he said, for a block, which I was surprised at. I mean, not that 10 grand is anything to shake a stick at, but you know, it was surprisingly cheaper than I was expecting. But so they're putting together that big CNC operation, one unit where they can basically fill it full of, I think it was 7 or 8 chunks of aluminum.
Spindle with them all on there.
And it'll run for a week before anybody has to touch it again, barring issues. But yeah, it was like they're after like 12 hours of machine time. So big diameter lifters.
That aluminum is just so crazy.
Yeah. And those blocks are simply a work of art anyway. I mean, look at all the sculpturing through these areas, right? I mean, this is not functional at all, other than weight savings.
Now, do they? Because the heads are made the same way, right? It's machined aluminum.
Yes.
Is everything, as far as flow goes, from what I understand, like with when you work on any of the engines and you do mild porting, is all that built into the CNC, or do they have somebody come in afterwards and do all that
Yeah,
stuff?
there's on the CNC, I'm going to say they come off the machine probably 90% complete, maybe a little better than that in the ports. But there's always going to be a spot in a port where you
can't get a tool.
Yeah, you just can't get tools to it, so you have to go in and hand port. Okay. You might clean up like a parting line, but it's damn near done.
Nice. All right.
All right, so rolling it by the humongous studs. Obviously a specialty oil pan. This runs a dry sump system, so what that means is it does not have a standard oil pump with a pickup inside like you would have off the rear main or the front main. Yep. It runs a dry sump, so it's actually that big hose. Yep. It's sucking the oil out by where this says System 1. That's the oil pump. So it's an external oil pump that is, usually they're belt driven. And I don't remember how this was driven on this one, but I mean it's drawing all that volume out and then pushing it back through the top side.
That's cool.
And the reason you do that is so you're not it keeps the engine or the oil cooler, and then because it runs through a cooler, and then it also allows you to about quadruple the oil capacity. So this runs about 4 gallons of oil in it.
Oh wow!
Because it has an external tank that you're pumping that back to. And then also, as the crankshaft is spinning in there, you're not slapping, the crankshaft isn't slapping oil, which creates not only poor lubrication because it'll start to foam or basically foam the oil, but you're also not hindering horsepower.
Okay.
Right? Every time it would slap,
resistance.
It would be, yeah.
So we did have some comments of people being like, "Oh, it didn't even look like this engine was run," and all that sort of stuff. Yep. And to a certain point, we were limited to what they had on hand.
Yep.
We did, while we were there, get to see a couple different things
a couple other
some
engines.
carnage.
Yeah. Carnage from some other teams too.
Yeah, exactly.
What this one had though is this was basically the block was at its end of its life relative to a nitro car.
I'm talking about earlier the tick marks of this has done this
Right.
many runs, and if we push it any farther, then we run the potential of it blowing up on the track.
Exactly right. Yep. Call it preventative maintenance
at
this point. So this was a running engine, and had assembled through all the pieces, parts with it, and we were basically as we were pulling it all apart. That was our main goal was that it was to actually swap the base block out.
And we'll see that later. And somebody I think commented on YouTube was like, "Oh, did you switch blocks out?" And yes.
So you have, large main studs through here, but then what you have instead of having a second set of bolts for like your traditional 4-bolt main, what this has instead of like a splay bolt coming this way at an angle, it actually has, call it a horizontal bolt coming from the side pan, doing essentially the same thing.
And that's what these are down here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't even notice that one.
Yeah, those go into the main cabs and tie all that aluminum and everything and really truss, the structure through there.
So right now you are pulling off the connecting or removing the pistons.
Yep, pulling pistons out. And a cool push tool, by the way. That tool is pretty sweet.
Oh yeah.
I mean, simple. Again, it is a big slug of steel on a bent rod. I mean, that's really what it is. But it's slick. Slick and easy.
Meant for speed.
Yep.
And typically, there's somebody laying under the engine.
Yes. Yeah, Brent is underneath the motor, catching the oil down his armpit, and and hot, by the way.
Yeah.
Laying on his back.
Just came off the track after going 300 and some miles an hour.
Yep.
All right, looks like we're on to all this business.
So at this point, this is where they tear it down every time after every run. So they're down to, this is the call it the bare block, if you will.
So they wouldn't go beyond this at the run. Right now they're ready to put the new set of heads on that's sitting there, new sets of pistons. Sometimes they have to do sleeves?
Sometimes, yep. And they'll do a sleeve right in the block in the car.
They got a cool thing that they just stick in there and just go.
Yep.
And because it's hot, that allows them to, they just slide out essentially at that
More or
point.
less,
don't they?
yeah.
Because I think they were showing us, and because it had been sitting there and it was cold, it was hard to get them out. Because I think we had to pull them out for this one just to clean it,
Yeah,
or
I
just
forget what
to
it was.
say,
It
hey,
was-
get rid of the, this block is leaving or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I know they can
Yeah.
reuse the sleeves.
Yeah. So kind of going back here again. So this is the oil pump. It's basically driven off the crankshaft or a camshaft, and then this is your bottom pulley for the blower. This is a tuning device. They'll put a different potentially a different pulley here. Normally your pulley up top though is more your tuning piece. That is not a water pump. This is just it's actually an extension for the fuel pump, because the fuel pump goes off the front of the motor.
Yep.
So that's just fuel pump extension, if you will. It runs off the camshaft, and then there's tensioners and that. That was actually that big piece is what holds it in the car.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, these 11,000 horsepower motors are held in by 4 hose clamps. That's your time. This is your timing pointer, right there. Timing mark on the balancer. This
like just kept revealing more stuff as you popped it off. All of a sudden there'd be like 47 more bolts to take off.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I really didn't quite understand what all this was really doing. I was like, whoa. But this is a fancy timing cover at the end of the day. That's the front of the camshaft, of course, and lots of bolts to hold it in place. Now, part of all that bolt on the top of that cam, or for that top cam gear, is the fact that it allows you to change cam timing.
Oh, okay.
So it's slotted, so you have a lot of bolts to keep it in position.
Gotcha. Now,
and this big puller to get the front of that off. Yeah.
That's cool.
Now we're starting. That's the very front of the crank. That's what that was. So you have you basically have, call that the balancer or the hub, and then this silver part I'm taking off right now that's actually just sealing the hub.
So so obviously you got the crankshaft and the camshaft. What's this guy?
That's just a follower gear. So instead of using a timing chain that would wrap around the lower and upper, it uses a gear to gear to
So it's not driving anything. It's just a gear sitting there in between the two.
Yeah.
Okay. And how come they don't do it where it's direct connect, just because of the gearing ratio has to be?
Well, that allows you to make it has some adjustment for engagement.
Okay.
Where when you're direct to, like on the flathead, you're kind of at the hope that things are cut in the right spot.
Right. If not, there's no way of adjusting
Yeah, there's no
one way
adjustment
or the other.
for lash.
Okay.
And then it comes out the camshaft.
Also billet steel?
Yep, billet steel camshaft, roller camshaft, obviously.
Anything in particular about the...
A crap load of torque on those bolts, or the nuts there.
Yeah. So breaking them loose was something. I mean, we can talk about
Yeah.
putting them in, because we see you wrenching on the torque wrench later.
Yeah, so then right there, last something that you typically don't have, but so if you go back right there in the main cap, see using a puller to get the caps out of the block. So they're threaded at the very top.
Oh yeah.
So it's just a slide hammer to pop them up out of there. Now, I shouldn't say it's not typical in that style of block where the crank is actually inset on the sides. Like on a Chevy, the main caps are proud of the pan rail, where the pan rail's it's countersunk almost, the crankshaft.
That's a big crankshaft.
Yeah. Now, cool little trick. That's a heavy son of a gun, right? And I was sitting there looking at it going, how am I going to grab a hold of this? Not only is it out here where you have, I don't want to say a lot of strength or a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
I'm like, how am I going to lift this thing out of there? Because I'm used to, or whatever. I mean, that's a heavy, steel crank.
I think they said it's roughly 80 pounds?
Yeah. And Cody goes, I said, how do you lift this out of there? He goes, go grab a rag and put it around a rod man. I'm like, what? Kind of that little questioning. And I did it. He goes, yeah, because your hands, of course your hand can grip that better. You're a little bit tighter. I am hanging onto the snout, but just using that rag around there was like, wow, that was pretty slick.
Yeah, you learn something new every day.
Yeah. And now, again, because we're changing the block, salvaging every piece we can possibly salvage. So yanking all the studs out. The studs have an external hex on them, most of them. There's a couple other internals to pull out.
We let you use power tools for once,
I know, it was crazy.
It's a good thing, too. It took us a while.
It was a good thing because there was a couple of these bad boys that were in there. So they're put in with Loctite. They are technically hand tight when you put them in there, but the Loctite they use is like, I don't know, weld. And they truly lock in there, and especially given the two different metals, because in between rounds as that aluminum, expands and contracts, they recheck those and make sure every one of them studs are back in there tight when they pull everything apart. Okay. They pull the head off, they'll check every one of them, make sure so they give them a little bit more. So if you think about it, every time they're a little bit deeper because it's warmer.
Yep.
Well, we're running on a cold block. It's like, no, I'm not coming out. So propane torch, nothing fancy, heat the tar out of it, and then get it to come out. And hope you don't pull the thread, because pulling head bolt thread's not the end of the world, but not great.
Well, in this thing, the block's all done anyway, so not a big deal.
Well, all done relative to nitro, because I love the fact when he made the comment to me that, well, this would last forever in a motor like you'd run.
Right.
A mere 1,000 horse.
Right. All right.
Yep.
There she
so
goes.
she's down.
That served her purpose, and now on to the, I don't know, recycle bin, I guess.
Yeah, they actually sell used parts.
Do they?
Yeah.
All right. So you could have that in your next
man.
build.
But you better make sure you got some way to cool it. It's not going to be on the street. Yeah, so here's a lineup of all the pieces that were in there, obviously minus the block.
A whole lot of stuff.
Yep.
All right, so on to the pistons.
Yep.
And this is something that they have new pistons ready to go, but this whole measurement, everything happens at the races?
Brent will have it all prepped where he have racks of pistons. So these are, these pistons have been run. You can see that they got, call it burn marks on the top, fuel been burned on top of them. So what they'll do is they'll have, 8 sets of these racks. They're everything's mic'd out. Yep, these are good rods. They're still within our use criteria as far as run wise. Same thing for pistons. I mean, they'll mic them for size, and they'll make sure, really the big thing is making sure the ring glands aren't collapsing. We got a couple pistons where the top where it just pounds, that nitro just pounds the top of the pistons, starts to pinch the gap. So they'll have them all set up like this with bearings in them.
Yep.
And they're ready to go. So in these cabinets above, they'll have them staged and set up.
Gotcha.
So then at the track, it's just a grab and go. So in this, so here he's checking diameter of the piston, the skirt, mainly skirt wear, but you check all that out. He's got a gauge there for it as well, and that's the top of the piston that he's checking. There he was looking at, just kind of looking through the ring glands. Here's Mike in the skirts. He's going to check.
This is it, up
Yeah,
above where his hands are going. It's going to that shot right here in a second, I think.
Yeah,
here you go.
There you go. So if you look, see he's holding it by the pin here, and then that's checking exactly right, rod stretch, because those aluminum rods move.
Yep.
And that's actually why they use aluminum rods instead of steel rods, because steel rods can't take the punishment of that beating that nitro gives them. And then here he's putting the caps on, and I'm sure he's
probably checking them again.
Yeah, checking he's checking the diameter of it.
So
and then that's the assembly lube that they use.
And then this is cool in terms of this thing that we sort of struggle with. You got these custom made.
Yep, so they use tapered sleeves, which is something you can buy. Every parts house sells them relative to size. So if you have a 30 over 4-inch bore, you buy a tapered sleeve that allows you to, how you would normally use these is you would set them on the block, and then they're wider at the top. They basically work as a funnel, and you push your piston and rods assembly right straight down, just lickety split down into the hole, right?
Yep.
But you usually only have one.
Right.
You don't have one for every piston in the rack of potentially, 8 is 64, potentially 6. So they got at least 64 of these ready to.
Yeah, because they're, as he has it on the tray there, that's how they are, because
Yes.
when they're at the track, they're going chung, 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 chung,
Yep.
putting those in as quick as they can.
Yeah. Yeah, they put 8 pistons in the time that I usually take to put one in. I mean, that is the truth.
All right, on to the heads.
Yeah, on the cylinder heads, a big, they have high valve spring pressure, so he's got again, kind of a specialty tool. I notice it's not a pneumatic. I was expecting a pneumatic tool.
Okay, just hand crank.
Yeah, just a hand crank. Probably found it's easier and less cumbersome to work with, right?
So are these, we talk, continue to talk about components and what is available to mere mortals, and then what these guys use. In terms of valves and springs and that sort of thing, like what is this custom stuff that they make, that they buy, that they like? What's one of these valves cost?
They are running titanium valves.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Titanium comes with a pretty heavy price. I know, on my meager level of racing, they're about $150 a piece.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, the valves are expensive,
Yeah.
but they are readily available to the general public. It's not anything that you can't mail order, quite honestly. Valve springs, I'm sure there's a special mix relative, to the material that they're using. Probably, and then there's titanium retainers and keepers. And the whole reason there is to keep your valve train light, because remember the RPM that those are moving up and down to be able to control the valve is what you're after there.
Well, the RPM too, your springs have to be powerful and fast enough with their
load.
Yeah. To actually be able to handle that. Otherwise, they would just float essentially.
That's exactly what happens. They'll hover.
Right.
Almost. Which is bad when the piston's coming after the valve. Yeah. Not good at all.
Bad things happen.
Yeah. Ugly.
So what's he doing there?
So
this is another part of the how many times.
How many times the valves have been run. Yep.
So he's got just a little etcher
Yeah.
there to put a little line in it and say
little
this
Best
is...
Buy etcher going to town.
Okay, and he's here checking that they're still
straight.
Okay.
Yep, that's a straightness gauge. And you could, when Brent was running the wrist pins, he had a gauge for that to a V block with a dial indicator right in the center, and he was rolling it, just checking it for straightness. So at right here, what he's doing is he's just hand lapping valves in there.
Which is funny to see that old school engine building tool in this like crazy modern
a little
setting.
wood handled suction cup.
I think he was saying that he had gotten a new set like a couple years ago or something, and they were awful. And the ones that he has are his that he's had for like 30
because the new ones are
something.
plastic handled instead of the wood, so you lose a feel to it, and the rubber on the puck or on the suction cup is probably a little different.
Mm-hmm. So here's the other head. Pulling out all those oil passages, or what's?
Well, that were spark plugs they pulled out there.
Oh, okay.
But then cleaning up. So all those tubes are your oil passages.
Gotcha.
Oil comes into the back side of the head, runs down that tube, and
new plugs.
Lubricating the guides, basically.
Torque wrench on all the plugs.
Yeah. And the plugs are interesting. They last exactly one run.
And then, up above where he's working right now, he opened the cabinet, and I was like, oh my gosh. It was a giant cabinet with nothing but spark plugs. Yep. And then he had them sort of organized in like these are, because I think they test them. They have some sort of tester where they...
Well, they read them.
Okay.
They read all the plugs. So how they look at it is basically how much of the electrode loop or the ground loop is burnt off. Mm-hmm. Now, if you and I were to pull a plug out of our daily driver and saw that loop was gone, we'd be like, oh no, right? No, they're looking at it going, oh, half of it's gone? Perfect.
Oh, okay. How? Because they want more of a gap, or what's
No,
the...
what it's saying is timing and the amount of fuel is exactly what they want. So it's their lean rich measurement.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's burning through those so fast, they actually want it to eat through it.
Because
that's showing that it's burning in that cylinder.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So what the fuel mixture is in each cylinder, and they check each cylinder because every cylinder potentially has a different size nozzle for the amount of fuel. So they might send, slightly more fuel to one cylinder than the other, and that's actually pretty normal because there's a couple cylinders that'll typically run hotter side to side than.
All right, supercharger. 2 people to carry this thing.
Yes, and that it's heavy. It really is.
Even with it being carbon fiber and.
Yeah, carbon fiber and aluminum.
And then Kevlar to protect it from killing somebody when it inevitably
basically
explodes.
It basically wears a bulletproof vest. Is what it amounts to.
So we'll adjust this right here.
Yes.
And just leave it at that. But do you want to have the honors of our blur?
Yes. So this is a competitive race team.
Yeah.
And you have rules that are very specific in what you can and cannot do. You see, it's in NASCAR, it's in sprint car racing, it's all the way down to go-kart racing for kids, right? I mean, you have rules. This is certainly not saying that this is a rule-breaking function, but you're always looking for a competitive advantage. And they leave rules open in some areas to say, you can do whatever you want to do here to make power. This is the area. So we were asked that proprietary-wise, this area of the blower is
off limits.
Yeah, off limits.
So there were some conspiracy theories about it and everything else.
Yeah.
This, I mean, now that we've addressed that, we can get into how bonkers these things are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Those blades are just unreal.
Yeah.
I kind of want to have one and make a lamp out of it or something. I don't know. They're so cool looking.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, the way they twist through.
And mesh into each other, yeah.
Right.
That just and how much air they can move.
Yep, exactly. So, a while back, you remember that was all the craze with the kids with the fidget spinner? This is the original fidget spinner.
Yeah, you just have to have 2 people to operate it. So all these, what is he? So
traditionally, when superchargers were developed for diesel engines, right, Detroit diesel, specifically, they were just these helix with just basically the mechanical clearance. Okay. What racing found out is, boy, if we seal this off, it makes a lot more power.
It's keeping that extra air. It's forcing that air down, and it's a seal.
It's a seal. So what you're doing is, as these things roll together, it's grabbing air and it's compressing it, right? So nothing different than an oil pump does or a fuel pump does. It's the same exact principle. And again, instead of having a metal, or in this case, aluminum seal, which you can't have the aluminum parts hitting each other because that would create friction and particles.
And you'd also lose power.
And you're losing, so you gain power by having it, but then you would lose some power. And then of course, as it heats up, it changes size and so on and so forth. So what has been added in blowers of today is you have grooves milled in, and then you put Teflon strips in them. Okay. And that's what he's peeling out here.
And it's a wear item.
It is a wear item, yep.
So that's...
Yep.
Now, is this something where I imagine... I can't even remember asking him, but is he putting in new blades with new strips after every run? Or is this the sort of one that'll get them through a race weekend, and then they'll rebuild?
They'll change them as it wears. I'm sure, I didn't talk to him directly on how he does what his limit is, but basically as it's too easy to turn, they're wore out.
Okay. And then this process of, I mean, those little things are in these as well. You can see the little grooves.
Yeah, basically seal off the end of it as well.
So yeah, you can see him shoving new ones in there, cutting them off.
And I would guess, again, I didn't sit with him. That's like a sizer, if I remember.
It is. That's exactly what you can see. He's got the dial indicator there, and so it's, I mean, again, with all the tolerances with this stuff and how measured and everything is, you can see the ones here that haven't been cut yet. He's got them all installed, ready to go, and then that machine was just a little, essentially a router bit that ran it all through, and
because the seals are oversized and then they're trimmed aside.
Yeah.
Opposed to letting them wear in.
Well, yeah, I'd imagine you would also just have problems with it fitting in there if you didn't trim them.
Yeah.
So again, he's doing the same thing, adding new strips, and then has this cool, this is like one of my favorite shots, watching this thing with the tool here. You just go zip, zip.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It is basically a router blade.
Yeah, zip, zip, zip. This is cool.
Yeah.
Back together.
Yep. And the blowers are as simple as that. You get gears on the end that tie the blades together, and
I was
c'est la vie.
actually surprised at when he puts the.
And there he's just checking. He had feeler gauges up in there, just checking that clearance, making sure everything's good.
And then some lubrication.
Yeah. Put the snout on.
I was surprised with how much oil came out from the, I guess, the gears on the end that keep everything lubricated. From heating up
you gotta lubricate. What I find is interesting is I would expect that to be like a standard gear lube or engine oil, what have you, right?
Yep.
But what's used is two-stroke oil.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yep, and one of the reasons they use two-stroke oil, obviously it has plenty of lubricating properties for the gears, but the deal with two-stroke oil is if the seal goes bad and it sucks it into the blower, because that's what happens to that oil if the seal goes bad, it just burns. No big deal.
Yep.
However, if you're using like gear lube, the gear lube doesn't burn and causes problems with lockup.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
In fact, the other thing too is to note on that. So when they make the pass, and at the end of the pass, you see basically every blower carb makes a big poof at the end. And it's kind of always that thing of, I always wondered, like, God, they all blow up at the end? Because that's what it looks like, big puff of white smoke. What it is, and I think we show it at the very end, it's on there, is there's a canister in the very back. And it's, say, a pint canister. And it's full of castor oil, like that you take for whatever that your grandma would give you, right? It's full of castor oil in it, and what happens, so when they shut it down, because fuel is lubricating those rotors in there, right, as they're turning.
The injectors.
Right, well, how you shut the motor down is you shut the fuel off. You stop giving it fuel. That shuts it down. Well, now you got rotors going in there just turning that are hot with no lubrication. So what that plume is you're seeing that shot of castor oil down into that blower, because it's still turning, because you can remember it's locked up at that point. The clutch is locked. You're not in neutral, so the motor's turning if it's rolling. Well, then the blower has to turn. Shoot that castor oil in there, keeps it lubricated, but cylinder walls are hot because you're blowing some of it in there, and it's burning out of the. End of it. But yeah, that was something I learned, because I was like, "What is that?"
They think of everything.
Yeah, I'm like, "Oh yeah." Well, they think of everything after it breaks, right? I mean, that's how the invention, necessity is the world's greatest invention, right?
Or the necessity is the mother of invention.
Mother of all invention, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you think about where drag racing has come from, and they're learning new things every single run, but they're especially learning new things every time something blows up.
Oh,
and they go, ooh.
Let's not do it that way. How come we make this last? So here is Now, this was not a brand new block either. This was using up an old block, or a previously used block. If I remember right, when you were talking about the cylinder, it did have a cylinder problem. So one of the cylinder walls was burnt, and they had just swapped it out. And so here I'm dousing it with brake clean everywhere.
Getting every last bit of anything out of there.
And then the cylinders all get like a gold look to them from the heat.
Oh, okay.
So Cody is saying what the big idea here is not that they're trying to gain, I mean, you want fresh crosshatch like any engine. But the other thing is you can also see how bad if there's any scratches in the cylinder that are more than what you want to have. And then of course if there's a crack as well.
So you're brushing it out to see that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so in a ball hone is literally a grinding stone. There's a grinding stone every one of those little legs that are little balls. And as you, that's basically tranny fluid that we're spraying on there. And just for lubrication, isn't it?
Yep.
You know, count to 10 type of deal. It cleans them up very nice. You get really nice crosshatch to them. So just like we do on every engine, torque all the main caps down and check them.
Oh yeah, there's the side.
See, there's the side. Yep. Pulled the side bolts back out.
That's a good view of what we were talking about earlier.
Actually, I guess
crazy
I guess the bearings technically were not in there. They check because they know what the thickness of their bearings are. That's actually on this the thrust bearing is a center bearing on a Mopar.
Oh, okay. Now there go your bearings.
Yep. Yeah. So now the bearings are in there.
And got your towel trick again.
Yep. Yep. To which I'll be using forever now, right?
Yeah, there were definitely a good number of takeaways that you got from this of kind
little
of
tricks,
bringing
so much
bringing
tricks,
back to the
but
shop.
some things to, you always learn something. There's got to be something to be learned everywhere.
And I don't know, in my opinion, it's a good way to live, to not, with as long as you've been doing this stuff, to go into something like this and be like, teach me.
Yeah.
And not go in being like, hey guys, I build engines all the time.
Right, exactly right. Well, and I always kind of wonder if the people think you're stupid, because I ask a lot of questions. Well, and it's not because I don't necessarily know anything, but it's like, I want to ask the question because depending on how you might have a different answer than I'm expecting. And if you go into it going, I know everything, which you don't, right? So then you learn. So here, nice little tech tip. I got to torque these things to 140 pounds. Can you imagine putting your foot against it and pulling it, rowing it towards you?
Yep.
Gee, he goes,
It's not gonna happen.
don't do it that way. He goes, turn it on its side, push down. Duh. Right? But it's like, okay, yeah. Now when you're doing 85 and 100, no big deal. But at 140, I mean, there's like a big jump in there.
Yeah. It's a good thing you weigh more than 140 pounds.
It is. And that's the other reason why you get on. Use that lever arm. On this, with the studs too, we always put in a stud. You double nut the stud, so you got something to torque, torque on. Now, granted, you're only putting these in, call it hand tight, but you see, there's a little tool that they have right there.
Right here.
Yeah, that's nothing more than a dead stop.
Oh, okay.
It's just a dead stop for the end of it.
So you thread it on until it stops.
Yeah, until it stops, and then it drives in, and then you just kick it real fast, and it pulls it right back out.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, but you don't have to double nut it to get enough drive on the thread.
To put it in, but to put it out, that wouldn't work. To pull it out that
No,
something like that wouldn't work. But just for ease of install.
No, then they had then there was an Allen head that goes in the end of it, just like we use on any of the your poly locks on rocker arms. The same principle, and you just use that to back it up. But it's a little more self-contained, a little less likely to fall down the intake manifold, some things like that.
On go all your timing gears.
Yep.
Again with the
bajillion
bolts.
bajillion little components.
Or nuts, rather.
And the stuff that they're like, leave this a little bit loose, and this, tighten this.
So
run all these studs in.
You ran all these studs in, just till they stopped? Like that was it? You didn't go
Nope.
Once they were in with that tool, they were in.
Yeah.
Looks like you got the torch out again to get something in all the way.
yeah, we had an issue. So one bolt, he's like, oh yeah, they just run them right in, no problem. Well, for some reason, that thread, it got about, you know, there's 1.5 inches of thread on there roughly. I got to 3/4 and it just stopped. So there was either something on the thread itself that it caught going down, and then just said, no way, I'm done. So we had to heat it, and it was right after, you know, Cody's like, oh yeah, no, we never have problems with these. Because I asked, you know, do you really want to use the impact run? Oh heck yeah, that's what we always do. And then boom, this bit bites us in the. So there we are with our tapered tools, putting everything in.
And what are you checking here?
Here so we put number 1 piston in, and we're finding basically finding top dead center at that point.
So then you're doing that, so then you can set your
put the camshaft in. Yep.
See, I learned stuff
That's
while
right.
I'm working with you.
That's right. So here I'm setting in.
Could I do it myself?
Again, that hub, you know, the hub, and almost looks like a pulley or like a water pump pulley there, but that's the timing hub.
Oh, yeah. So
setting it at
lining up your dash with your mark.
And I think it's basically static timing. Everything's timed. If I remember, it was 32 degrees, 32 or 34 degrees. So instead of setting it at, like we set everything at 0, they set it already advanced.
So it looks like you have a couple different ticks there. You had a white one, a yellow one, a red one.
But that's your rotation, so 90 degrees or 180 degrees out, and check it. Yeah. And then that timing tab slides to get to your 0, so you're setting 0 and then rolling in.
Yeah. It's fun going through this frame by frame. Like, I mean, I've watched this a
Right.
bajillion times, but, you know, I guess the point of these videos is so we pick out the details like that.
Oh,
but
yeah, right.
also we see people on YouTube be like, oh man, I went through it frame by frame, or oh, I watched it at quarter speed.
Which is
or
great.
whatever.
I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, you pick out a lot of cool stuff.
Just running the camshaft up in there and basically using a huge Allen wrench to rotate it, setting it in position, putting the gear in, you know, meshing up the gears. It's got that follower in there. And here what I'm trying to find is basically where the camshaft needs to be at, and there's all those multitude of holes. Well, they're not symmetric exactly, right? There's some play to them. So you're trying to find out what one lines up the best so you can get teeth and everything lined up all at the same time. So now just rotating over, and we're watching he's setting timing marks on it. We adjusted it because it wasn't where we wanted it to be. So you're setting the position, you're degreeing in the camshaft here. Okay. Slightly different than how we run it off the bottom pulley with a chain, and with the gear to gear, you're running off the top.
And now you can tighten it all down.
Yep. Now what we didn't catch in here, I guess, but so something I found that was really interesting is, so traditionally speaking, you degree your cam in off of number 1, and you're done, right? Cam's in perfect, everything's great. The step in between putting the fuel pump extension on is we took the gauges, found top dead center on number 6, and checked the timing on number 6.
Oh, interesting.
And while we were doing that, I was scratching my head going, why are we doing this? This makes no sense to me. If it's in, it's in, you know? And so I asked Cody, I'm like, why do you check the same thing back on 6? That makes no sense to me. And he goes, what we're really checking for is if the block is physically twisted.
Oh, wow.
Because if the block is physically twisted, when it comes up relative to the cam position, it'll be different. And it's a way to check it. So it's probably ultimately a better way to check it than if you were to, I'll say, sit and try to mic everything.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting.
But I thought it was an interesting
when you
little
say
deal.
mic, meaning trying to mic the whole block to make sure it's still square.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's a quicker check than going through all the inspection procedures. And here you're setting the camshaft, or basically checking the camshaft in play, making sure it's not too tight.
So you pulled that off.
Yeah, take it all back
so it's
off.
spacer.
Yep.
So you checked what that end play is, and then
Yep.
do they have different size of those to take up however much?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Again, that is nothing more than an extension. So your fuel pump could go directly to the camshaft, but then the belt would be hitting it. So that's a clearance function. And then that's the mag drive So you still only have one output off the camshaft as far as driving the distributor, right? Or in this case, magnetos. So what there is there's a 1-to-1. So when the front one turns, the back one turns exactly the same amount of time.
There's a gear in there.
So there's gear in there, yeah. So what it does is it doubles the output off the camshaft to run 2 distributors.
I didn't realize
and
that
they
there
have
was a
to be
mechanical thing.
And of course they have to be timed, right? You don't want them out of sequence. So that's our tray of pistons that Brent put together, and we got, the sleeves, assembly sleeves on every one of them. Set her down in there and just push her through. I mean, it's amazing how slick they work.
There's your oil pump.
Yeah, that's the oil pump. I tried putting it on the other way. I mean, you're always trying something new, right? I mean, that's the idea.
You're trying to really help them discover.
I was trying to
maybe.
trying to streamline the front end.
It's kind of in the way right here.
Cody's like, dude, those bolts are not going to line up the wrong way around. Picky.
What does he know?
Yeah. So drop the other 4 pistons in.
So easy. Look how quickly they go in there.
Yeah, and Cody run. That was something that was surprising too. Is every based on speed. So they're running all the electric, hand tool, impact drivers, and they're not trying to torque them. They're just running them up tight.
Yep.
They've done the checks. They know it's 20 foot-pounds or whatever, and they're going to torque these to 60. So it's you're not relying on the impact wrench to do it. You're still going back to a mechanical clicker wrench.
Yep.
That
tried and true.
The tried and true, exactly right.
Now these are still pretty high on this too, wasn't it? As far as
I'm trying to remember what they were. Stocks, standard is like 45. I want to say they were at 60, so a fair amount more, especially going into aluminum.
Okay. Yeah.
This pan was trick. I mean, but so they glue the oil pan. The oil pan gasket is glued to the rubber gasket is glued to the oil pan.
Oh, okay.
Again,
so it comes in, right there. You see it.
So it's in there. So at the track, it's the same thing because they're doing it upside down, mind you. But so it's all ready to go, and they pop it up in there.
So he's Brent essentially is underneath going zip, 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 zip all the way around, out, and then starts pulling everything.
Yep. So there's our short block.
Cody standing back there just watching you.
Yep. So at this point, when you're at a racetrack and it's, I don't know, let's say 10 o'clock in the morning, and they're not going to run maybe until 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, something like that, right?
Yep.
I've always wondered why it's the first run. So do all these teams show up not prepared to race? Because they're all sitting in the car like this.
Oh, right.
Right? Just the short block sitting in the car. Heads are off. It's like, what is, it's one of those things of what's going on?
Why wouldn't you just roll up?
Why wouldn't you roll up ready to run? I understand maybe the blower or the hat up there bouncing around the trailer. You don't want that, so you secure it someplace else. But the heads, why wouldn't you be sitting on the stand ready to roll, right?
Yep.
The reason is as your day progresses and your weather changes, that head gasket is one of the major tuning devices.
In terms of adjusting your
compression.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So they'll use the same on each side, but they will adjust them. So instead of saying, let's say instead of putting a 100 thousandths gasket in there, they may put an 80 or they'll put a 120. I mean, whatever the increments are, right? But that is one of the tuning pieces in there. Because the idea is you want to make as much power as you can, but it has to be what the track will take. What you're in, of course, clutching is involved in there too. But at the same token, if you get a lot of water grains, you can't run a lot of compression. It doesn't want that. It wants less.
Okay.
So you're playing with that. So now it makes sense to why they hustle their hind ends off a half hour after they've been, I'll say it, standing around for 4 hours, right? Doing stuff, but not putting the motor together.
Yeah.
Going, geez, why aren't you guys ready to go? Well, it's because they make the last minute call, and it's a half hour, an hour beforehand, and say, yep, this is the gasket. This is the head gasket. Go.
glued on gasket as well with the head coming on? Or is that
Yep.
just sitting there?
Yep. No, I take that back. Those just sit on there.
Okay.
Yep. But they're a heavy, rubber and a
look at
lot of torque.
Oh, look at that. That's basically what, they take a socket and just
Yep.
weld on a pipe?
Exactly. Exactly right. And now you're going to ask, why didn't you roll this on its side, right?
Yeah?
Because at this point, it's getting heavy.
Oh, yeah, if you start rolling it, it's going to want to go.
Yep. And now, again, it's not that crazy, but
Cody here holding the other
yeah,
side.
I got a lot of ballast over in this side to counteract the roll. Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell that you're putting some effort in there. I think you were sweating after this.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely was. And I forget what we're doing here.
Probably dropping in. Tightening those.
Tighten down those
studs.
those inner nuts. Yeah.
The nuts on those studs.
Yep.
Okay, so torquing those too.
Yep.
And,
So those got to be torqued.
You mentioned that earlier, that they had sort of an extra little, almost
just
crow's foot type.
Yeah, little close-in crow's foot. And again, you can only go just a 16th of a turn. And there's like a little lock square washer in there as well. What they do, they have what they call peanut butter, which is, and you can see some right here. So this tan grease is, so under every head, and at some point I'm sure you see basically using the acid brush to wipe it on. So every washer and every hex nut gets coated on the bottom where the torque surface is made. Just like when we put them together and we make sure they got, you use the ARP grease, as far as the bolts are concerned. But what that is it's a grease relative to diesel assembly. And at the end of the day, they found that gives them like the most consistent torque. So the idea is you're taking away, the friction between the steel, so you're getting true torque and clamp pressure. Because torque is all about just clamping the materials together.
Right.
That's the whole idea. So the more consistent you are on that torque, the more consistent the clamping load is.
Lots of torquing.
And now these mammoth push rods, diameter-wise, they are huge. So right here, make sure you just saw some of that peanut butter. So there's the peanut butter going on. So right here, you will notice out of the 8 push rods, it is missing one. And it's right here. Okay? There's no push rod here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Right?
Yep.
So as we're doing this, I say, hey, Cody, get one more. And he goes, no, don't put that in yet. I'm like, what do you mean don't put it in yet? Well, and he explained. He said, basically, because of the lift of the camshaft and the valve train angles, so you set this shaft on, or the whole shaft assembly down on there. Because one spring or one lifter is all the way up, coming towards the valve train, you would have to basically compress one spring a lot, right, all the way. What you run the risk of is you run the risk of taking that against the into your valve and your roller on your lifter. You risk going and kicking it off.
Oh, okay.
So you risk damaging a valve, right? So what they do is they put all but that one on, that one in, right? You can see it there, it's missing.
Yep.
So they put them all in, because you've got to line a lot of stuff up when you set all this together. I mean, it's kind of tricky. So he goes through, you run them all down.
Torquing.
Yep, torque everything down. And the same thing on the other head, right? Same idea. But see, on a Mopar, the rocker arm is, call it spring loaded. You can just see the spring on this one here. So what it allows you to do is it allows you to slip the valve train or the rocker arm over and then drop the push rod in whenever you want. So
gotcha. So these
kind of a slick.
These springs right here. Let you slide
allows
it over.
you to push it over. So basically, he'll go through and he'll roll the motor over to take the tension off of that, or
At this
To
point, you're
basically drop
torqued
that
down
lifter.
on the other one, so when
Right.
you turn it over,
The
it's
lift-
fine pushing up on another one somewhere.
Exactly right. You drop the lifter down, then you set that last push rod in, and then set your stuff on, and then continue on as normal. Yep. So here we're putting down the intake manifold.
Look at all that.
Yeah.
Injector,
Yeah.
everything. It's crazy. Got your headers coming on.
Yeah,
here.
we put these on separate. We didn't have them mounted already on that. You can see, like real quickly there, the rotors are all pointing in that same direction. That means they're all set to the same spot. Call it number 1, right?
Okay, yeah, and you're setting your...
Yep, then you're clamping them all together because there's a clamp that holds them together from basically wobbling all over the place. Because when you're standing next to this when it's running, you know why everything's clamped down. It's violent.
Punching you in the face.
Yes, yeah. Yep, then lift up the big blower with the Kevlar bag on it.
It gets all strapped down. It's got pins and
Yep.
everything that
I
hold
mean,
it
you
down.
notice they color code their wires, right? The ends of them. Red and black. It's relative to the which mag it is.
So each mag drives one plug in each cylinder.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
As opposed to like one drive in
Yep.
one
And
side.
it's not
one
for
drive in the other.
redundancy. It's for covering all that fuel, to burn all that fuel out. And then so like part of we were talking about tuning stuff before. They're telemetry wise, they're recording exhaust temperatures. That's what those
so
are.
each pipe has
Every
its own.
pipe has a EGT on it. Yep.
That's cool.
And there's sensors multiple other places around the engine for different things.
Well, and all that stuff is sort of how they have been able to arrive at some type of horsepower calculation because there's no dyno that can hold this.
Yeah, there are no dynos capable of holding the power of that. They have a dyno room, but the dyno room is actually for dynoing the blower. So they spin the blower, which is an obnoxious amount of power to spin just the blower. In the motor, they say
They have
it's
like some crazy electric motor in
yeah,
there.
they have a huge, that thing is like a foot and a half in diameter.
And
electric
every
motor.
time they turned it on, you hear everybody in the whole entire shop, massive shop,
yeah?
they turn that on and everybody stops what they're doing and just puts their hands over their ears.
It's obnoxiously loud, yes. Yep. And it has sound deadening in it. So even then it's still loud. But yeah, so they dyno basically your injector hat and your blower. And they've learned that what the CFM that it puts out, that's a good basis for what kind of power it's going to put out or deciding factor. On back to the blower too, back up just a bit. Okay, so you got, like I mentioned before, you got a bottom pulley here, crank, and there are different ones, but typically these stay the same. This is just a follower up here, or a tensioner, mechanical tensioner to keep that belt tight. And then the very top pulley, they will change that. You change the number of teeth up or down, and that changes the ratio, the driven ratio of that blower. So you can, and this baffles my mind, you can overdrive it, which means it's turning more than the crank, which makes sense, right? You're putting more pressure. Or you can underdrive it and still make power. Lots of it. Which is, when you hear underdrive, it's like, oh, hold it, you're turning the top slower than the bottom and making more power. Somehow that doesn't make sense, but you got to remember it's always more than atmospheric pressure. Anything over atmospheric pressure is making more power than what if it wasn't blown. So yeah, pretty wild.
And then even with that said, that the amount of power that it takes, the amount of power that the engine needs to provide to just run the supercharger.
Right, because the air that it's compressing.
Yeah.
Right, the resistance.
The amount of
that.
force that it takes just to drive that unit to then provide more power.
Is said to be 800 horse when it's running.
So even like your like most hopped up street engine can't even turn.
Couldn't turn this at wide open throttle.
That's just
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Absolutely crazy. All right, so it's together.
It is together.
And
now the fun
off
begins.
to the races.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, people get at us with some of our previous builds of whether we ran into some hiccups and we couldn't start it in time, or we've got our engine stand now, so we're at least able to start it. But like, you build something like this, You wanted to go in the car, and you wanted to go fast.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So something that I found was really interesting, and you get that, oh wow, what's going to be the most surprising thing? And the most surprising thing is when you're in that shop, to me, is the fact that it's just like being at the drag strip, because they're working out of the trailers just in a huge warehouse at the end of the day. So you have a semi-truck pulled into your garage, and you're working out of that, and it's just like, wow, the size is remarkable. But it makes sense because you got, 6 to 8 guys working on this car, and when it really counts, you're working out of the trailer.
Yep.
So why not practice in the trailer?
Absolutely.
Why not always be out of, and you don't have to worry as much about, like I've gotten to the racetrack before and forgot, the jack, the timing light, because I'm not working out of my trailer. I work out of the shop, and then and it's like, it eliminates that.
Same thing with all our video equipment.
Yes.
We do this project here, and then we got to pack it up and go do barn find hunter, and then we're like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Oh no, I know exactly where it's sitting.
Right.
So before we get into this, rough cost of an engine like this.
So the rough cost, just general numbers, you're at $10,000 for a bare block, right?
Yep.
You're at probably $3 to $4, $5 maybe for a crank. Rods are cheap at $150 a piece, not bad. Valves $150 a piece.
Yeah.
So you got probably another probably 10 to 20 in heads, something like that.
Yeah.
Superchargers are pushing 30, I guess.
Jeez.
But at the end of the day, just in very generic round numbers, you're $60,000, $70,000, to put the engine together.
Right. That's not counting the fact that this whole entire body is carbon fiber.
It's all carbon fiber body panels. Yep.
And the amount of time and engineering and just brain power that goes into making the frames and
there is
the whole engineering side of it.
The body panels have a purpose over sponsorship.
Yeah.
Right. They do have a purpose for streamlining it somewhat. Dragsters are not the most aerodynamic pieces because you have in fact, you can just kind of see that you have these canards in here to help deflect the air up over the tires. Otherwise, those tires at speed are barn door, right? Air doesn't want to go over the top of them. So everything on this dragster has a purpose. Otherwise, there's no point. Right. You have a front wing that's giving you a ton of downforce to keep the nose on the ground because air up underneath it wants to throw it over, which, you can get only so far where the wheelie bars are saying, up, I'm done, right? And then at the same token, that big wing is not up there just to be cool. It's not a spoiler on your Subaru. It is there for a real reason, right? It is, what was it like?
All the Subaru people are furiously typing something right now. If they've made it this far in the video.
They're still trying to figure out what to do with 4 more pistons. So you have, but you have this huge wing up there that's creating, like 2 ton of downforce on the rear tires. Because at the end of the day, it all boils down to how much power can those tires apply to this. And I think it was Tony when we were talking to him, he goes, yes, we're trying to spin the world. At the end of the day, we're trying to increase the rotation of the world. And so it's absolutely phenomenal when you see, what those tires, the contortion that the tires
It says they grow like, in terms of height, they grow like 8 inches or something like that.
They get narrow and tall by, like I said, about 8 inches. When they're at top speed, when you see the profile across them, they're round on the front side and dead flat on the back. It's the wackiest looking thing. But so, all right. So some of the questions we were asked, we talked about how much power it takes to spin the blower itself. So one of the questions, it's burning fuel. Well, it's got an 18-gallon fuel tank.
Which is up in the front up here?
Yeah, yep, way up front, right behind the wheels. In fact, there is right here is it's a tow hook to some extent, but it's also a tube that forces air into the top of the tank and basically pressurizes the fuel system.
Okay.
To help.
As it's moving,
Yes.
it's got a little. It's just going.
Just extra. It's
Yeah.
like supercharging the fuel tank, right? To force that, because I forget what the fuel line is literally 2.5 inches type size, right? And the fuel pump is more than capable, but anything you can do to help get more fuel is better. So anyhow, it uses all 18 gallons. I mean, that is the point. You don't have extra at the end of the track, right?
18 gallons in a quarter mile.
So yeah, so at 18 gallons, and actually they're doing 1,000 feet. They're not even going, they've dropped the length of the track from a quarter of 1320 down to 1,000 feet. So they're off the throttle for that last 300 feet
of
the quarter. But just using a quarter mile as a round number, that's not, it probably a little bit better than 72 gallons per mile.
And this isn't your $2.80 87 fuel.
No.
What a 50-gallon drum goes for.
Well, in a 50-gallon drum, you get 45. I think it was 45 gallons, because you can't fill a 55-gallon 100% full based on the fuel and safety and blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. So you get 45 gallons of fuel, and that fuel is right around $1,200 for 45 gallons. So yeah, it is not your economic commuter.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, essentially, if you did want to go a mile, you would be going through an entire drum and then some.
Oh, 2 drums.
Yeah.
To go a mile. I mean, basically, right?
Yeah.
Drum and a half. Yeah.
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 Hey, look, I didn't even notice that you were standing.
Oh yeah.
There you are.
Yeah, and at that distance, when that dragster takes off, it felt like the skin was going to rip off my arm with the sound waves going by me. It was amazing. I've been close to them, running at the track, but I've never been absolutely on the track, and that's just a phenomenal experience. I mean, at the racetrack, it's phenomenal. Standing there is like way over the top. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Overall, just a super unique experience
yeah.
from start to finish. And I mean, if we haven't said it before, super thanks to DSR for letting us do this. It was Kyle Cunningham there and everybody. It was awesome.
Yeah. We came across no one that wasn't hospitable, willing to answer that silly question potentially, right? Or get into the deep details. I mean, they know what they're doing. There's no doubt about it. So
all that culminates in.
Yep, exactly. So what that's culminated into? Oh yeah, gosh, we got to get to the.
I know this is
the best.
Okay, so we're at the track.
Yep.
In this instance right here, just in terms of how we had to do everything, this engine isn't the one that we...
No, this is not the one that we put together. No.
But fill me in on where your build went and how it performed. Did it see race time?
Yep, so it saw race time. It went into the dragster basically right away. It was the #1 qualifier when they went to Virginia. So at the Virginia race, they were #1 qualifier with the motor we put together. All right. It ran.
You probably didn't tell anybody.
No, I haven't told anybody. I don't think there's anybody I haven't told that I haven't ran into. So it was #1 qualifier there. It ran 4 rounds of qualifying. It was #1. He had a bye run in the first round, which means there wasn't a competitor. They had a bye run. There was an odd number, and being #1 qualifier, you get to run by yourself, so to speak. In round 2, he went out Tony went out in round 2 for tire shake, basically.
Okay.
So they put it on the trailer. The next week, they went to Bristol, and they were only the #2 qualifier.
Oh. And this is out of how many cars?
I'm not sure how many they had there. Always 6 years. Typically, there's at least 16. At Virginia, it looks like there was 15 or somebody dropped out. I don't know.
Okay.
But you're typically around 16 to 18, maybe 20 cars. So number 2 qualifier in Bristol, and made 4 rounds of qualifying there. So the engine is already up to, let's see, 6, 4, we're at 10 rounds at this point. There's 4 more rounds to run to win. It won first round, it won second round, it won third round, and it won the race. So it came home with the Wally.
That's awesome. They didn't send you a trophy or anything for that?
I got a picture with Tony and the trophy
nice.
for the mantle.
That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
I mean,
pretty awesome.
The fact that we got to do this is like pretty incredible to begin with, but to like, for you especially, being the car guy that you are, like that's...
Oh, that was phenomenal. I mean, that was...
You'll be telling your like great-grandkids about that for sure.
I remember when I built that motor for Tony Schumacher. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, that was, from a... if I have a bucket list, I mean, that's definitely something that was like, oh yeah, this would be sweet. I mean, that's so over the top for me, I couldn't even imagine doing that, right? And now have done it, and then just the icing on the cake is the fact that it was number 1 qualifier and then won the race after that. Was just like, wow. And to this point in the season, that is the only race they've won. Which is odd because Tony is pretty unstoppable most of the time, and just a kind of an off year.
Sounds like they need to have you back down there again.
Well, there's been some kick around for that, so we'll see.
You have the magic touch. The magic touch.
Come with my little pixie dust. And
Well, thanks guys for watching. Hope that you enjoyed just sticking through all this. There's a lot to talk about on this.
Oh yeah.
And
there's a lot of stuff.
And yeah, we got a couple engines on stands over there that
a couple of them are hiding.
That are our next Redline rebuilds that will be coming to you as soon as we can get them to you. And,
the unfortunate part, I'll guarantee you they won't make the horsepower of this one.
No.
But they're going to be fun.
One of them comes as close as you can get in the real world.
In the real world, yes. Yes, it does.
If you have questions beyond what we covered, I feel like we covered a whole lot, but if there's any other questions, leave them in the comments below.
Yep.
Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and watch more of our videos.
That's right. Till next time.
See ya.
Yeah, hit that.